And next, we'll move right into the legislative updates. We have Charles and Kate from Charles Group Consulting, as well as myself, Josh Marston, as president, and Sarah Christie, our MAPA legislative chair. So Charles and Kate, I'll turn it over to you.
Kate, we can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that. And I know Charles is on as well, but I was just saying thank you so much for having us here today. We're really thrilled to be here with you all. And I know it's under odd circumstances, as everything seems to be this time of everything going on, but we're happy to be here and be able to share some of what we're working on with you. And I know that we want to also give a really short overview and then really allow time for some questions and discussion too. And Charles, are you?
I'm on. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Can you see me too? Or?
Yes.
Okay, good. I can't really see myself, but okay. It's all right. Yeah. I just want to also say, we've been working with MAPA for well over a decade, and we have always been extremely proud to represent this profession. We have tremendous respect for the work that you do, and within the last 10 years, I don't think that regard for the work that you do has been any higher than over the last few weeks. As we've seen PAs jump into this extraordinary crisis in all capacities. All right, was that me or? So it has never been more important. Your profession has never been more important than it is today, and you are providing vital care to so many different people. Whether they're dealing with COVID-19 or they're dealing with any other health crisis that doesn't unfortunately stop during this period of time. Our job is to make sure that policymakers understand the profession as best as we possibly can get them to understand it, and to utilize PAs to the fullest extent they possibly can, and to leverage your expertise and your abilities, and I think policymakers really are beginning to understand that, in ways that they have never understood it before. So, Kate?
Yeah. So, I apologize. I have a echo on my end, but. I think one of the main things right now in terms of legislation and what we're working on is just obviously the impact that COVID-19 has had on everything, and that includes the state legislature and anything that they are taking up or considering in this current environment. And so it's really shifted our advocacy across the board. And so kind of backing up for a second, I would say, going into this legislative session with MAPA, we had really two primary legislative priorities we were working on. And one was around ensuring that PAs across the state did not have to sign non-compete agreements. And this is something that came to MAPA's attention through some of you all, through members that reached out and said, this is something I'm experiencing. And the legislature has been really open to trying to adjust this. In fact, I think everyone that we spoke to and everyone that we brought this to their attention that this was happening in the field was pretty appalled. So that bill has actually moved forward pretty significantly through at least the House of Representatives. And I would say it was teed up in a very good shape to be done sort of before all of this happened. And this has obviously just really paused everything outside of immediate responses to that. And then the second thing quickly, the second bill that we filed this session was around Section 12 and Section 35 and allowing PAs, adding PAs to the statute in order to allow you to sign those forms. And this is something that we run into a lot, and just high level, as Sarah and Josh know well, a lot of what we do legislatively is ensuring that PAs are included where they should be included. And this has been a historical issue. And I think it ties directly into the continued need to educate policymakers and legislators as to the level of your education, expertise, and what you're really doing every day throughout Massachusetts and throughout the nation. And so that's one of these pieces where we're trying to amend that statute. That's been a little bit of a more difficult bill to move forward simply because the legislature is very hesitant to make changes to things where they feel other practitioners may want to try to insert themselves into that, and they don't necessarily want to wade into opening those statutes. So we've been working on that, but I think that's a bit of a slower campaign. And I'll pause there. Charles or Sarah or Josh, do you want to jump in on any of that?
I don't.
Okay.
Sarah, Josh, do you want to?
Sure. So, Kate, thank you for the update on kind of what we have been working on. And there's sort of almost a pre-COVID and current COVID sort of stages that we have of work. So that's our ongoing work to just continue to push PA practice forward in Massachusetts. And then sort of our current body of work has been, first we asked the state to do a sort of an emergency relaxation of supervision for PAs to allow a lot better fluidity and flexibility for staffing, as people are going to need to be moved around the hospital into different areas that they may not currently work in. What they allowed us to do is not have to use people moving around the hospital still would need a supervising physician in their new area of work, but they do not need to sign new supervising physician agreements or prescriptive practice agreements, and nothing needs to be registered with the state. So it's basically been brought down to the hospital level for reassigning or redeploying PAs in other areas of the hospital. So I think that moved very quickly. We wrote up a document and drafted a letter and sent that to Mary Lou Sutters and to various members of the House and the Senate and the DPH. And very quickly that was enacted. So that was something that just showed us how important it is to be a part of the process and to advocate for your profession, and how important it is just within the overall landscape of healthcare within Massachusetts. Josh, did you want to comment on that piece at all?
I will say thank you for really working hard on that while I was down south. It's a great win for us, and absolutely amazing that we were able to move something forward. I will say as well, we're still working on additional PR campaigns to get more information out regarding really the role that all of the PAs play in the current healthcare environments, pre and post the COVID environment. I do want to say congratulations to our friends up in Maine for passing a true optimal team practice bill. That is something that in Massachusetts that we are working hard to potentially pass something like that in the near future. So we're constantly, and thank you, Charles and Kate, for really paying attention to any bills that are going forward. And we do have, I guess, our optimal language that we would like to actually pass as well. So that is something that we are considering and hopeful that we may be able to get through this legislative session.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to add, just for those folks who might not be as familiar with the kinds of things that MAPPA has done over the years, I think it's also just important to put it into context. That we have helped make Massachusetts a very good place for PAs to practice prior to this crisis. When I first started working, I tell the story, when I first started working with MAPA, I don't know to what degree those folks who were participating, how long you've been practicing as a PA. But when I first started over 10 years ago working with MAPA, a physician could only supervise by statute, not even regulations, by statute, 2 PAs at any one time. And never understood why that was the case. It was demeaning to physicians and certainly demeaning to PAs, and didn't work well for hospital settings or physician groups or any practice setting for that matter. We were able to relatively quickly change that to 4. This is sort of the way the legislature works. Like, oh, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Hey, how about 4? 2's not good. How about 4? And then quickly realized that 4 wasn't optimal either, and eliminated that and basically said it's up to the physician to decide how many that they feel they're capable of supervising. So we have made these incremental changes over the years, and which have certainly benefited the profession, but more importantly, have benefited healthcare as a whole. I think someone once said that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. We're kind of keeping that in mind during these periods of time. With other clients that we work with, we're trying to really make sure that there's a social safety net for those individuals who are really falling through the cracks. For folks in healthcare, and particularly for PAs, I think that my hope is that when this crisis abates, and it will abate, and we look back, that people will look and say, my gosh, look at what PAs did when needed. That they jumped in the same way, by the way, that MAPA has jumped in around not as dramatic a crisis, the opioid crisis in Massachusetts, but MAPA was really one of the first healthcare providers to sort of fully step in and say, we're going to do our part and do whatever is asked of us and volunteer to be a part of the solution for the opioid crisis. My hope is that when this is over, people will look at PAs and say, wow, look what they did, and look at let's make the changes that we made around supervision permanent, and more importantly, let's look at other ways to modify supervision in particular, because PAs have demonstrated that they don't need to have someone completely watching over them in the way that that the profession was initially designed, right? That healthcare has changed, the role of PAs has changed, the kind of level of education that a PA has now versus when the profession was created has changed. And so my hope is that one of the silver linings within this crisis is that we will then be able to kind of move this profession forward in the way that we were, quite frankly, hoping to do when this crisis began.
So there's a few questions in the Q&A that I think we should get to. One of them is, as OTP is becoming a reality and listening to the current presentation, I am concerned we are going for baby steps, when in fact we should be going for the giant leap forward. Have you followed the changes in Maine, and what are the plans to go after OTP? So I could start a little bit with that, and that every single state legislature has a little bit of a different process for how to move things forward. So we are actively monitoring ways to get our language inserted in. But I guess Charles and Kate, you could probably answer a little bit more about the current legislative process and why we can't file that strict language as is, and we have to modify a separate bill, amend a separate bill to get the language in at the current time.
Kate, are you there? You want to?
So I'll just jump in
Sarah.
for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's sort of in response to that question. We are talking about big steps. So what may appear to be baby steps on the outside doesn't fully do justice to sort of the things that we are looking for around supervision. And what I was going to say quickly also is just completely agree with Charles that I think the profession will never be the same. And I think that we are stepping into a new era, sort of during and post-COVID, that I think that there'll be forward movement, and that MAPPA is actively working on this, and we are watching some of the bills that are coming up right now to find a way to insert our language that would be fairly comprehensive.
Yeah, and I will say, oh, go ahead, Josh.
No, you can continue on.
I was going to say, I appreciate the question, and I don't think we are taking baby steps. I think we are. Our goal is to have what Maine has, right? I mean that, and in fact, recently we have shared that model with policymakers to say this is what is needed. This is what we want to be focusing on. So a baby step would be that we just think we should take a small step and just achieve this. No, we would love to see Maine enacted right here in Massachusetts tomorrow. The question is, how do you go about doing that? And every legislature is different, and the power structures and the players involved are different. Let me turn it back to the folks who are also participating in this, right? Because I mentioned the successes that we've had over the years. Those came at a price, and the price is people like Josh and Sarah and others and others who are not as involved these days, who have spent significant amount of time and effort to really push the envelope and to participate and to talk to policymakers. That there are other health professions out there that have more numbers than PAs do. So from a number standpoint, we have to work harder. We have to work smarter. We have to be even more strategic. But I don't want to give the impression that we're taking baby steps. We're not. As a profession, we want to take giant leaps. We're not going to be complacent with small steps. But we also have to kind of recognize that that it is challenging to move things forward in Massachusetts, particularly when it comes to the so-called scope of practice, which is sort of this red herring that we have here in Massachusetts and affects every healthcare profession in particular. My ask of everybody here is to really commit yourselves to being involved with MAPPA. Right? We cannot do this alone. We need all of you. Obviously, this is a challenging time for everybody, who is participating in this, for every PA. But to whatever extent you can, during this period of time, commit yourself to being involved with MAPPA as we seek to really grow this profession. It will assist you in your work, and more importantly, it will assist every person who is a beneficiary of healthcare in Massachusetts.
Okay. And I'll let everyone know as well that if there are any action alerts, we will get those out as needed when they come along. So we'll let you know additional ways to contact your legislators and elected officials to be able to help us out. The next question, are the new guidelines the same for NPs? I will say the nursing legislation is working on their own separate legislation, and we can't comment on that at this time, as that would be up to them to describe their current practice. But the DPH advisory that we posted is for PAs only. The next question, if retired PAs are asked to volunteer during this pandemic, do we need to get our own malpractice? Sarah, you probably would be able to answer that the best. I think the best answer would probably be that's up to each individual hospital if they're actually covering you, I assume.
Yeah, I'm going to have to decline giving an answer on that because I just don't know the answer.
Yep. The next question.
Sarah, one thing.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, we should also take a look at a few years back, we had included PAs in the Good Samaritan law in Massachusetts. I know that there was an effort to try to, I think there was it might have been SARS. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was some other crisis. We did, we created a Good Samaritan, or we updated the Good Samaritan law, and we made sure that PAs were included as part of that. So I don't know if that would address the issue, that someone would be covered under the Good Samaritan law and wouldn't necessarily need to carry malpractice insurance because they would be held harmless for any actions they take under a crisis like this. But it's something we should look into.
Okay, we'll get you an answer with that. Jeff, you asked another question about ex-waivered PAs. I think at the top of my head, I don't think we have an answer to that with the 96-hour notice, as a lot of those notifications are done at the federal level. But I'll see if I could find an answer to that with the 96-hour notice for PAs. The next question, does the change in practice guidelines also apply to outpatient settings? For example, multi-specialty group practice?
Yes, the emergency measures that went through applies to PA practice across the state.
Okay. So you just be sure that your hospital leadership, or if you are PA leadership in the hospital, that you read closely that DPH guidelines, but it should include every specialty group. Let's go through here. Side question, Charles and/or Sarah, does your firm represent any other medical professions? I'll say yes, they do, but their main one is dental that they work on with the dental hygienists, I believe.
Correct. Yeah, I'll say that those are the only two healthcare professions that we represent are dental hygienists and physician assistants. And oddly enough, what we're working on with the dental hygienists is to actually create what we call a PA model for oral healthcare. So it's nice that PAs are actually the model that our other client dental hygienists are working on to create a new designation in oral health. But those are the only two professions that we work on.
Okay, and then Jeff, Kate, I think you're talking, but you're muted right now.
Yeah, she texted me that she's having a problem with her audio. Oh,
yeah,
no,
are you able to hear me?
She's fine.
Yes.
We can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I was just going to say, I was going to jump in. I got a question that came in, I think, right before we went on that you touched on briefly before, which is how a PA asked, how can we, the PA profession, best assist now and kind of over the next year or going forward in terms of the legislative work. So I would just kind of put in a plug, as we often do. It's really helpful for us throughout all of our advocacy to have stories and anecdotes and testimonials from folks on the ground as to how any of these policy changes will make a difference in the day-to-day work that you all do. I think that's, as Josh and Sarah and Cole and others know well, having you even in on a meeting occasionally with a legislator, you can tell the story in ways that Charles and I just simply can't do, given that we're not a practicing PA that's working on the ground. And even if coming up to the State House like that is not something you can do, as we work on this OPT campaign, both this session and then, following return to a different normal and we file legislation next January, that will be really critical for us to have a lot of voices. What this is so important on that level. I just want to kind of put in a plug for that too.
Okay, I just want to finish up so we can move on to a quick break before the next session. I know Jeff is asking many questions in the chat box. And Jeff, I will say in regards to that 96-hour notice, we'll look into that for you and get more information back. I don't think I know off the top of my head. And to answer your other points regarding supervision, yes, the model language that we're trying to insert into a bill is the complete removal of having a supervising physician. We are currently working with Mass Medical Society, the Mass Hospital Association to work with them and get this approved, but things obviously are changing on a daily basis. So we are actively monitoring every single bill and working with the other groups to try to pass the absolute model legislation for PAs of Massachusetts. So we're working hard and have spent a lot of hours. Sarah and I have spent, Cole, Duncan, Jason Parente, meeting with legislators to try to advance this. And thank you to Kate, Charles, and Catherine at their office as well for the amount of time they're spending working on all of this for our guys. So please let us know if you have any other questions through email. We can absolutely get back to them if anyone has any suggestions or is willing and able to help us out when we have a need for PAs to assist in this matter. But Charles, Kate, or Sarah, any other closing thoughts before we move on to a quick break?
No, just stay tuned. There's more to come. And like everyone's saying, just many hands, light work. And if we can keep moving this stuff forward, this would be terrific. And just be well, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, we would just say be well and be safe, and thank you for everything that you're doing. As Kate and I, as the non healthcare professionals on participating in this as just consumers, and hopefully not consumers in this regard, doing everything on our part to stay home and so that you have one less person to treat. I think that the other thing that's going to happen at the end of this crisis is that people are going to really recognize the selfless sacrifices that PAs and other healthcare professionals provide to all of us out there. So thank you, and please stay safe and well.
Great. And at this point, yes, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat box or send us an email. But we'll take about a 15-minute break, and we'll restart again at 12:25 with Jason Rands with Flexion Therapeutics. Thank you.